Hello again, everyone. This video is going to be very controversial, but everybody already knows that this is what this channel is about. So I had a video request, and simply because it was a request, that's the reason I'm doing this. I got an email, and it's right there. It says, "I have been watching your channel for a while now. I was really glad when you decided to bring other topics onto your channel while still keeping to what you promised about your channel being one to bring awareness to things others don't talk about. The videos that you have done about Satanism, the occult, and other spiritual things without bashing any religion in the process ensured me that I could request a video and not receive hate for it, or at least no hate from you. I would like to see a video done about the history of sacrifices done through as many religions as you can come up with, what type of sacrifices they do, and what they had hoped to achieve in doing so. I follow true crime as well, and I do see a lot of people saying that certain crimes resemble human sacrifices, when I do not see it myself. Your favorite saying is, "It's not Satanism." And mine is, "That's not a real sacrifice." I totally feel that. I really do. Many people I've noticed don't understand the concept of true sacrifices, and it gets a bad name. I'm not saying I condone human sacrifices by any means, nor that they do not occur by some deranged psycho. But I'm saying the history of sacrifice should be discussed because it levels out the playing field to where one religion cannot just accuse another religion of it when it indeed is part of the majority of religions, paths, faiths, and cultures. Thank you for your time, Sierra. I will not state what her YouTube name is or her Facebook name. But, it's going to be a very interesting video. I will give a trigger warning. It is about human sacrifice. And it does, in the information I have, it does list, oh, there goes my dog again. It does list a few different religions. So, if I mention your religion, I am in no way saying that because you are part of that religion that you will be out sacrificing humans. I am in no way thinking that you condone it if it is part of your religion, thousands of years ago or whatever. And I am not saying that in order to follow that religion that human sacrifice is a necessity. So, as with every other video and everything on this channel, it is all about respect, and it is all about just acknowledging that things do happen. They do happen. And it is part of our history. So, with that being said, do not think that in any way I am bashing or calling out any certain religion, because I'm not. That's not what I do. I am simply giving the information that was requested. So, gory offerings to the gods. Human sacrifice throughout history. Religious human sacrifice has been a hallmark of many civilizations throughout history. Throughout millennia of human and religious history, people have sought to appease their gods or authoritative figures with the ultimate expression of devotion. Oftentimes, this ultimate expression has manifested itself in the performance of human sacrifice. Closely linked to modern perceptions of what human sacrifice is meant to be identified as are the practices of cannibalism and headhunting. Religious in nature and could very well exist today in remote areas of the world where tribes have had little to no contact with the outside world, such as some regions of the Amazon or New Guinean rainforests. Little is known of human sacrifice before the Neolithic Revolution 12,000 years ago. In Asia Minor and the Tigris-Euphrates Crescent, there is evidence of human sacrifice linked to fertility rites and the need for successful harvests. Human sacrifice in ancient Egypt. Although evidence is sparse, what does exist hints at retainer sacrifice in pre-dynastic Egypt, which is to say, the mass killing of servants upon the passing of a king so that they can serve him in the afterlife. The evidence comes from the religious city of Abydos, and the remains suggest that the acts of sacrifice was voluntary, with no signs of a struggle. Evidence for further practice of human sacrifice disappears around 2800 BCE, before the transition of Egypt from kingdoms into dynastic phase. The Levant and evidence from the Bible. The Moabites are mentioned in detail regarding human sacrifices in the Bible. According to 2 Kings, human sacrifices were not common, but were made in times of peril to their god Chernosh. The kingdom of Israel was often in conflict with the kingdom of Moab, which covered areas around the Dead Sea and extended into Jordan. During the Israelite siege of the Moabite capital, 2 Kings 3:27, the king of Moab sacrificed his own son. Following the sacrifice, there was great indignation amongst the Israelites. The Israelites lifted the siege, to much modern debate as to why. Perhaps they were shamed by the desperation of their enemy, or fearful that they had caused something strictly forbidden by their God and were fearful of his wrath. Many other instances of individual human sacrifices are mentioned in the Bible. Aside from the abortive attempt by Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, which is also mentioned in the Quran, there were instances by others where the sacrifices were indeed carried out. Ahaz and Manasseh, kings of Judah, also sacrificed their children. The former, 2 Kings 16:13, sacrificed his son, burning the body as an offering, and the latter, 2 Chronicles 33:6, did the same, burning his two sons in the valley of Hinnom. This provoked their god to anger, and in later religions, the valley is symbolic of hell. Human sacrifice in Europe. The European cultures of antiquity were also no stranger to the ultimate religious expressions of violence. The Greeks, Romans, Celts, and Germanic people all practiced ritual human sacrifice to a certain degree. The ancient Greeks practiced pharmakos, whereby cripples, criminals, or slaves would be thrown off a cliff to ward off disaster. This process disappeared in later antiquity as the Greeks moved towards a more civilized society. In Roman society, human sacrifice was rare, but better documented. Like the Greeks, human sacrifice was seen as a remnant of the more uncivilized age, and as Rome progressed, the victims was replaced with symbolic items such as dolls or statues. In 216 BCE, after the Roman defeat of the Carthaginians at Cannae, believed to be the biggest defeat in the history of Rome, 2 Gauls and 2 Greek couples were buried under the Forum Boarium as a plea to the gods. The act was considered by many to be wholly alien to the Roman spirit. The rite was apparently practiced again during the Roman conquest of Gaul. The Romans did have traditions of ritual murder, which they did not consider human sacrifice. Hermaphroditic children were regularly drowned. Vestal virgins accused of being unchaste were buried alive in specially built chambers. Their chastity was thought to protect Rome, so even in times of peace, the unchaste virgins became victims of religious beliefs. The Romans also did not strictly consider gladiatorial combat to be religious sacrifice, despite the fact that death in the arena was believed to appease chthonic deities. Okay, yeah, this is getting to where some of these words I am not going to be pronouncing right. It seems that the Romans practiced ritual sacrifice at many levels, but suffered from an inability to see it the same way they saw ritual sacrifice in other cultures. A classic case of double standards. The Celts practiced human sacrifice extensively. Funerary rites involved the burning of retainers who were imprisoned in giant wicker men set on fire to join their master in the afterlife. There were many different ritual killing methods for each of the gods. Offerings to Teotihuacán were drowned. Victims meant for Uranus were hanged and flogged to death, while those meant for Tyrannus were burnt. Ritual decapitations was also commonplace. However, it is important to note that descriptions of all of these sources originate from the Greco-Romans, who may have exaggerated the practices to further the image of the Celts being barbarous savages. The Germanic peoples, including the Scandinavians, had similar rites. After the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, Roman commanders were sacrificed to Mars, as many Germans had adopted Roman beliefs. This included suspending the severed arms of their victims from tree branches. The Norse also adopted forms of retainer sacrifices, killing slaves to accompany their masters to Valhalla. According to the monk Adhemar de Chabannes, the founder of the Principality of Normandy, Royal, practiced human sacrifice in honor of the Norse gods despite having been baptized and converting to Christianity. The Phoenicians and the Carthaginians. According to both Greek and Roman sources, the Phoenicians and their later incarnation as the Carthaginians practiced infant sacrifice. Although much of what is written of Carthage comes from the undoubtedly biased view of their Roman enemies, given the evidence, it is widely accepted in the academic world that infant sacrifice was a reality in the Carthaginian world, although to what extent and how it was performed are disputed. Current evidence shows that 20,000 urns were deposited in a child's cemetery called Tophet. The Greek Plutarch, however it's said, asserts that such sacrifices were commonplace, while the Bible describes that babies were roasted and sacrificed to the god Moloch. In Diodorus Siculus' Bibliotheca Historica, the author describes a bronze statue of Cronus with extended hands sloping downwards. Infants would be placed on the hands, whereupon they would roll off into a pit of fire. Non-archaeological stories such as these are debated in scholarly circles and are often attributed as anti-Carthaginian propaganda. The Aztecs. Of particular note concerning human sacrifice is the culture of the Aztecs, where human sacrifice was de jure. The Aztecs believed their god Huitzilopochtli, one of those names are just not going to roll off of my tongue, required human blood to fight the moon every night so that the sun could rise again in the morning. The Aztecs also used human sacrifice to instill control through fear over the subjects over which they held dominion. As the Aztec Empire existed as a loose federation with the city of Tenochtitlan as the center of control, every year the Flower Wars were fought, in which opposing combatants representing all the Aztec territories would compete in the battlefield in taking as many captives as possible. These captives would suffer the gruesome fate of being sacrificed to one of the many gods, while the captors would be rewarded for their prowess. Captives weren't the only ones sacrificed. Families from all walks of life would offer up one of their own to earn favor from the gods. Of particular note, it is the offering of infants and children to the rain god Tlaloc. Sacrifices to Huitzilopochtli, or however that's said, involved marching the victim to the temple at the top of the steep pyramid. The steps, slippery with blood, thrown over a blood-soaked altar, their arms and legs were held in place facing the sky. The priest would then use a sacrificial dagger made from obsidian glass and cut the hearts out of the victim's chest. The body was then thrown down the steep steps. Finally, their heads were removed from their corpses and added to a skull rack called Tzompontli, which displayed the skulls of all the victims. Children sacrificed to Tlaloc suffered an even more painful fate. It was believed that Tlaloc required the tears of children in order to bring rain to the crops. So the victims were made to suffer the most excruciating torture before having their hearts removed from their chests. Chief among these practices was the ripping out of the fingernails. In addition to all the sacrificial slaughter, the Aztecs also practiced cannibalism and wore the flayed skin of their victims. Towards the end times of their empire, when Tenochtitlan was besieged by the coalition of their subjects who had had enough, spurred on and enjoined by the Spanish conquistadores, the Aztecs were sacrificing many thousands each day. One claim states that Aztec priests took the lives of 80,000 victims in one single day. While this may be an exaggeration, it does explain why the population of the empire in the later years was in serious decline. West Africa. Human sacrifice was common in certain areas of West Africa, especially in Benin, and especially after a ruler or king had died. Sometimes thousands of people were slain in these events, in addition to an annual event where 500 victims were killed. In the Ashanti region of modern-day Ghana, capital punishment was usually tied to sacrificing the guilty party to the gods. These practices continued well into the 19th century. In the northern parts of the continent, the spread of Islam put an end to tribal beliefs of ritual human sacrifice. Human sacrifice today has mostly disappeared. Ritual human sacrifice is extremely rare today. A few isolated cases are reported from time to time, however. Human sacrifice is illegal all over the world, but there are instances of cults that have continued to practice an obvious secret. Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Panama, India, Liberia, Uganda, Italy, and the UK have all, in recent years, had cases of human sacrifices being performed. The law has obviously curtailed the cultural norms of human sacrifice, yet the law cannot fix human psychology. And there are still many human beings who find the idea of human sacrifice a tempting diversion from modern cultural morals. Now, with that being said, I do not in any way condone human sacrifice. I do not promote it. I do not participate. This is simply a video to bring awareness about it. And I too have seen, like Sierra, I have seen a lot of people saying that bodies have been posed in a sacrificial state, or that it looks like it could have been the act of a human sacrifice. And because I have studied many religions and everything, I agree with Sierra that the majority of what is said and seen in today's world is not the actual act of human sacrifice. Now, I'm not saying that, some psycho doesn't have that on his mind or her mind while she's killing somebody or prepping the body to be found later. Everybody always wants to give law enforcement or whoever stumbles upon the body, a major show of surprise right when they find them. And, when they get to be all big and bad and people's talking about all these different things like, oh, it has to be Satanism or it's a human sacrifice, stuff like that. It just builds up the case. It gives them a bigger ego. But there is actual cases of human sacrifices that have happened throughout our history. And we do need to remember them. They are victims. They should not be forgotten. They went through horrific things, sacrificed because somebody believes some God out there somewhere needs that blood or that body, in order to do their, godly things, whatever that is. So this is a topic that I agree, Sierra. I really do. It does need attention brought to it. I just don't know of any recent cases that have been confirmed as a human sacrifice. I've come across a couple of cases where, like, a dog was sacrificed, or there was some crimes that was being committed and they wanted to blame it on the Santeria community, and they were trying to say that some goats and stuff had been sacrificed and was found at a murder scene. But later, after they investigated, they found out that the goats was actually being sacrificed for their religion, and they were cleaning the goats after the sacrifice so that they could properly eat the meat and stuff. And then people that was there for that stumbled upon the murdered victims. And I can't remember which state that was in. I want to say something like maybe like Arizona or Arkansas, maybe. I don't remember. It's been a while since I heard about that one. But come to find out, the animal sacrifice literally had nothing to do with the murder scene, even though people wanted to keep saying that it did. Gave the case some hype. They ended up solving the case and all of that, so that it had a good, come out about it. But yeah, human sacrifice is actually a thing that has happened in almost every religion. So you was also true when you said that it needed to be pointed out. That way one religion cannot bash another religion because of things that happened in their past. I agree with you on that as well. stuff like this happens, and then one religion takes a run with it, and oh, this other religion, y'all are horrid because y'all have all of this in your history and stuff. But it's literally like every part of everyone's history. Cannibalism, the head shrinking from some of the other tribes and stuff. Like, we all have some of that in our history. And it doesn't matter if we, like, follow that religion or that belief system that actually did this stuff. Our ancestors that follow that religion or whatever may or may not have had anything to do with any of the sacrifice, but they still follow that religion, so therefore it affects us in today's world. And we should not bash other people for what our history has presented us, considering the fact that everybody's history at some point ties in with everybody else's. Be it this country battling this country, or this religion not liking this religion, or this somebody with the Smith last name not liking the Reynolds last name. Everything like that, it affects who we are today. And the only thing that we can do is learn from it and grow. We cannot continually think about what our ancestors did in their religion, or because of their belief system, or how they handled their wars or battles, because how we do our things today is nothing like that. And I'm not saying we don't have a battle and all we do is go down and sit down over a cup of tea and work out issues. No, humanity is not like that. But at the same time, we don't just go put stakes in our yard and hang heads on them. There's laws that prevent doing stuff like that. And number two, for the most part, we are more civilized than that at this current state of our evolution. But with that also said, there are some sickos out there. And there are some sickos that want the attention. And even if they don't do it, well, I guess you could say right, they do attempt at making it appear as though it is a sacrifice that has occurred at a crime. It may or may not be connected. Hopefully, law enforcement is smart enough to be able to differentiate between what happens at the crime and what happened before the crime or after the crime, and find the sickos that commit the crime. But we should not bash other people's religions and stuff based on what people did 12,000 years ago. So I'm so sorry, Sierra, that you are having to deal with that. I get it. And yes, my favorite saying is that is not Satanism. So I totally get what you're going through when something like this is important to you and you are trying to correct others. And I am not making this video to correct others. I am not trying to sway anybody's thinking. You are free to believe whatever it is that you want to believe. But I did this video to point out that there are many, and so many more than I've even mentioned here, religions, traditions, paths, cultures, I don't remember exactly what else she said in the email about the different sections or whatever. But it's out there. And we cannot hold today's society for what our ancestors did. And if there is a sicko out there that is trying to make scenes look like it contains a sacrifice of any time or any kind, then most likely it's just something that they've seen on TV and maybe they think it looks cool, or they want to throw off law enforcement or the public to make them think it is a different religion or different culture that committed the crime. But that doesn't mean that what was done is actually done as a human sacrifice. I hope that makes sense. And I'm going to go ahead and cut off this video, but hopefully some of these answered some of your questions, Sierra. And I would say drop a comment, but then they would actually know who you are. You gave your name, but anyway, if you have any further questions or whatever, you can email me and maybe I can comment your question or whatever for you if you don't want to be known. But yeah, thoughts, comments, anything, anyone? Have a good day.